Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Horse Racing Show. I'm Kenny Rice, and glad that you can be with us for this lucky episode number 13, because we're going to have quite possibly the greatest trainer of all time on the show. If he's not the best, he's one of them. He would be that Mount Rushmore guy, and that is Bob Baffert. He'll be joining us, and from NBC Sports, Randy Moss. That's on episode 13. Now, how's that for luck, researcher Thomas Kenny?
Well, believe it or not, Kenny, 13 used to be my lucky number.
No, I did not know that.
Against, convention and logic and this, that, and the other.
Much like this show against convention and logic. That's exactly why we're here. Right, Scott Hall?
That's correct.
Thank you very much. Ben Chaffins is taking pictures to put us on Twitter and Instagram and, Facebook. His private collection, whatever. That's going on right now in the studio. But Bob will join us and Randy will join us in a few minutes. Now, we talked about Bob Baffert and the success he's had. He's won 5 Kentucky Derbies, 7 Preakness, 3 Belmonts. He's had 5 chances at the Triple Crown. To even have one's amazing, but he also had Silver Charm, Real Quiet, War Emblem, especially Charm and Quiet, almost that close. And then, of course, he's won 2 Triple Crowns. We say that like almost passe now. He won 2 Triple Crowns. Only Sonny Jim Fitzsimmons with Gallant Fox and Omaha. And I did not cover those, Thomas, quite, to contrary. I was not there in the 30s to cover them. But American Pharoah, of course, in 15 and Justify last year. And if he wins another Kentucky Derby, he'll tie the legendary Ben Jones with 6 Kentucky Derby wins. Now, has anybody been hotter than Bob Baffert, say, since 2015 on the sports scene, Thomas?
Well, it depends on what sport we're talking about. Obviously, if we're speaking on NASCAR, which is my dad's favorite sport.
Yeah.
It's really been kind of up in the air since 2015. Not even the same team has been winning championships with different drivers. And of course, no one's going to match Jimmie Johnson's legendary streak from 2006 to 2010.
Right.
That was back when I followed the sport. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, Jimmie Johnson, he must be the best racer of all time.
He was for a while, yeah.
Little did I know there was a guy named Dale Earnhardt, another guy, Richard Petty.
Yeah.
Had come along before my time. But as of 2015 on,
yeah, I thought we'd use as a time frame because Bob's won his 2 Triple Crowns during this period of time, and I just think Tom Brady obviously comes to mind.
Tom Brady and the Patriots, they've won 3 championships: 2015, 2017, and most recently here in 2019.
And on the ice, we'll talk Stanley Cups. You guys won
Sidney
a couple.
Crosby,
yeah, with the Penguins.
They've won 2 since 2015. That was in 16 and 17.
And let's see, who other individual you might have within the team concept? I know we're talking about guys in the team concept.
Steph Curry.
Yeah.
With the Golden State Warriors. They've won 3.
Yeah.
15, 17, and 18.
And we'll get back to another sport you like, car racing with Formula One.
Formula One, yeah. Lewis Hamilton, guy from the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
He's won 3 drivers' championships in 2015, 17, and 18.
Wow. So that's pretty impressive. So we're talking about a small number, and really Lewis Hamilton, from an individual standpoint, obviously they got a crew, they got a team. Like horse racing guys have a team. They have assistant trainers, people in the barn. Coaches that have done pretty well since 2015 in the college world.
Well, it's hard to talk about college coaches without mentioning Nick Saban.
Yeah. Yeah. Saban, Alabama, he's won like 5?
I believe 5.
5, 6?
5 total.
And 2 in the last, since 15, right? At Alabama. Dabo Swinney has won 2 at Clemson since 2015.
Yep. They kind of alternated.
They have, haven't they? 15 Bama, 16 Clemson, 17 Bama, this past year Clemson.
Yep.
Okay. And Jay Wright, really nice guy too, from Villanova. I've called some of his games way back. He's a really good guy. Yeah, so Villanova won it 16 and then 18.
Yep.
So what Bob Baffert's done is pretty special in horse racing. The run he's had, I don't think anybody's alive that still remembers it. I don't think anybody's alive that remembers the Triple Crown of the 30s or remembers it well. There's probably some guys in their late 80s, 90s that would remember it. I don't know how well they remember it because they had to been kids. But what Bob's doing is something else. And we just saw something else over the weekend. I'm not even a golf fan, but I know Tiger Woods. And to go 14 years between Masters championships like that and have the personal problems and especially the injury, the back problems. The back problems to me was the biggest thing. I didn't think he could ever come back from that. But that, even if you're not a golf fan, did you enjoy the Masters, the finale with Tiger Woods?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, talk about not quite a Cinderella story. He's been there before, obviously,
Right.
but like you said, 14 years in between championships. That's nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, from what I was watching on CBS coverage, it's never happened at the Masters to have that gap between wins. And so that was something else. Something else always is Bob Baffert. He comes in with Roadster, Game Winner, and Improbable. 3 shots at going for his 6th Kentucky Derby. And when we come back, we will talk with him right here only on The Horse Racing Show. Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. Thank you for watching us on YouTube, tuning in to iTunes and Google Play on Facebook, and you can follow us at the Horse Racing Show on Twitter. We have talked about this man absolutely every show we've done up till now. His name has been brought up. That's because you can't talk about the Derby without talking about the Hall of Famer, the man that's won the Derby 5 times. He's won 15 Triple Crown races. That's more than anybody else, and the 2-time Triple Crown winner. Can I say any more than here is Bob Baffert? Hello, Bob.
Kenny, thanks for having me on.
Well, listen, I'm glad to catch up with you. And honestly, it wouldn't be the Derby if you're not in this thing. And I don't know if you ever feel pressured to get in this thing every year. We're going to talk about your horses in a minute. But what does it mean to be on the Derby scene again?
You know what? It's really exciting. Because it's our marquee race, and we have all these young horses. We shoot for it, and I can't believe I'm sitting there with with 3 really nice horses. And it's funny, Richard Mandela, who's my neighbor here, he couldn't be any giddier. He came by today, and he's got probably the favorite. Omaha Beach, and I could just tell his whole personality and just the excitement, as a trainer going to the Derby, but with a horse that has a chance to win it. And that there's nothing more exciting more than that, because when you have a long shot, it's okay. It's just like, you're going to need some kind of a Hail Mary pass, but it's a fun situation to be in.
Now, will you stand outside with Richard Mandela and flip a coin over, is Mike Smith going to ride Roadster, who won Santa Anita for you, or is he going to ride Omaha Beach, who won Arkansas for him? Is that how you decide this?
I think Mike Smith right now, I haven't heard from him. And so he's probably went to see those psychic readers, or he's probably talking to everybody right now, like, what should I do? And so he's got a pretty tough, those are 2 really solid horses, and so I don't know, it's going to be it's going to be tough for him, but we just have to be prepared. If it doesn't work out, it's like you hate to lose your quarterback. I'd rather have him riding for me than against me in one of those big races. So, but if it happens, you just gotta, it's like putting a ball in the water. You just gotta get another ball and take another swing.
It is. You have to map out all kinds of different things, don't you? I mean, what your horses are going to run, where the jockey may be, who the jockey's going to get. I think people, obviously in the business, get it, Bob, but I'm not sure those casual fans that just watch you and root for you at the Derby every year, watching on NBC, understand that it's more than you just show up with a good horse, which obviously is what you want, but
there's a lot of moving parts. You have to have a good horse. You have to keep them healthy. You have to keep the weight. They got to handle the running, tough races. They come back, and some horses need a little extra time. They don't show up. If you draw a bad pose, if you don't break well, you get wiped out at the start. There's so many things that go wrong. That's why I'm never really relaxed. I get the saddle on them, and once I get the saddle on and put the jockey on, then I'm relaxed for a little bit. And then I do the lucky interview with you right before they go in the gate.
Yeah.
And that helps out. You're the only guy that can, I can really speak casually and freely with, because you know the state that I'm under. That's why I told Bill Belichick one time. He was with us at the Preakness, and he says, "Man," he says, "we're there talking. These people are coming up to me all the time." He says, "Man, they really, I can tell you, there's a lot of pressure." Yeah, except for you. You don't. You imagine you being on the sideline, and you're calling in a play, and you're going for third and a yard, or you're trying to get in the end zone, and some guy walks up to you, who's been drinking all day, say, "Hey, can I have a selfie with you?" That's the difference. I mean, I'm right there with the crowd. We don't have our little, and you want to be nice to everybody because, they're there to have a good time, and sometimes I just have to, said, bite my lip. But it's the Derby. It's a scene, as you know, and it's crazy, and but I'd rather be there than anywhere else, and especially with a horse, and then when you win it, oh, what a feeling! It's priceless, and it's just it just we have to sacrifice so many things and put the hours in, but just like any great coach, great coaches, you have to put the time in. You read about these coaches, they get there at 5, they leave there at 9. We do the same thing. We go to bed thinking about these horses and wake up thinking about these horses.
We're talking with the Hall of and that's why you do it so well. We're talking with the Hall of Famer Bob Baffert. People ask me in whatever career I've had, 2 great moments. I said 15, I interviewed the Triple Crown winner. 18, I interviewed the Triple Crown winner. The first guy to do that. And I take a lot of pride in that. That was a big deal to me, too, to be just a whole part of the scene for horse racing, for you that I've known for 20-some years. And I think just for sports because, that Derby and then the Triple Crown, that's the 2 that everybody relates to, right? Belichick relates to that. The guy on the street that, walking down Wilshire Boulevard out there, he'll know about the Kentucky Derby, won't he, Bob? He may not know if you won the Travers or the Haskell, but he'll know if you won the Kentucky Derby.
The Kentucky Derby is our Masters. It's the Masters, and that's the one we all watch. And by the way, you know what? That Tiger Woods, I started crying when he was coming up to that last hole. I mean, to me, see, that's what I felt that way when American Pharoah won the Triple Crown. Watching him come down there, I got teary-eyed. There's nothing like those super sports moments.
Right.
I know they asked Tiger Woods, "Is there any other sporting event that inspired you?" And he couldn't think of any. I said, "Well, apparently you didn't watch American Pharoah win the Triple Crown.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that guy?" But it's things like that. I've been inspired. I was there when Kirk Gibson hit the home run at Dodger Stadium. It was my first baseball game. I was there for that, and I always remember those. And so these great moments. But in horse racing, I'm glad that I was part of a race that inspired a lot of people because that's all I heard afterwards. Because I watched that race as a fan. I mean, American Pharoah's Triple Crown was. I'll never forget how loud it was. The stands were shaking when you get 100,000 people, all rooting for one horse. It's not like the Super Bowl where half the crowd's rooting for everybody. This was everybody was all in, and that's what the beauty of horse racing. Especially when you follow a great horse like that.
I remember about that you looked over at me. I'm just behind the camera because I'm going to be with you. And, win, lose, I'm going to be there to interview you. And you looked over at me and said, "Hey, and I thought you were going to give me that Joe Namath, I guarantee a victory moment. I don't know if you even remember this. You were there with your wife, Jill, and son, Bodie, and your family's around you. And I'm getting ready to, get on the talk back switch where I can talk directly to the truck. And I was getting ready to say, Bob's going to give me a great quote. And you said, "Did you ever see anything like this at a Triple Crown?" And the Burger King guy was behind you. Do you remember that?
When the Burger King guy shows up, that means I've got a hell of a horse.
I know it.
And
I know.
I mean it. And I told him, I said, I think I was justified. The second race, I says, this is a Burger King horse. I think I got a burger. I think this could be a Burger King horse. So it was funny. Actually, when I see him and the guy inside it, he's actually I finally met him this last year for the first time. He's an actor, and he watched some races with us beforehand in the box there, and really nice guy. But you know what? It makes it for fun and racing on those big days. We put on that big show, and we're seeing at our best. And unfortunately, we've been going through a tough time here at Santa Anita, unfortunately. But one thing about it, we have the 4 favorites at the Kentucky Derby, all trained at Santa Anita on this surface. So it goes to show you, it's not everybody was knocking, Santa Anita, but this is the best place to get a horse ready for the Kentucky Derby.
And no one knows that better than Bob Baffert. So let me ask you about your horses. First off, with Game Winner and Improbable, you did have to make a switch because they canceled the week out there at Santa Anita. So you take them to the Rebel at Arkansas. Improbable stays out there to run the Arkansas Derby. Game Winner comes back and runs second to your roadster in the Santa Anita Derby. Did that throw their schedule off enough? I know you're not going to make excuses. I'm not trying to set you up to make one, but it would seem that maybe things might have been out of sorts a little bit with them. Even though they both had good second-place finishes?
Yeah, I would have liked to run them here at home and not ship them. I don't want to ship twice. It can be a little bit harder on them. But at the end of the day, once it happens, I don't worry about it. I've learned never to look back. Just look forward and forget about what happened yesterday or last week. You better move forward because I don't like that. Complain or whatever, if we could have run or whatever. But you know what? It's one of those things where I'm just glad that they're doing well. We have 3 weeks to really fine tune them, and we have 3 good horses. Do I feel like I did last year? No, because when I had Justify you and Pharaoh, I knew I was coming in there. I was coming in there with a cannon, So, but it's a really good field. There's a lot of parity. There's really nice horses this year, and nobody's really, other than you got the Arkansas Derby, but there hasn't been a horse that really just has, exploded, and which is good. We're all close, but Omaha Beach is definitely, he's the, he looks the part. Trained by a great guy, and it's like, and so it's fun, to get to all the owners. They're getting there. They're all dreaming and Technicolor right now, which is great. I dream in black and white. But I'm a realist kind of guy. To me, I always go in there, expect the worst, hope for the best attitude. Otherwise, you go crazy in this game. It'll drive you nuts.
My favorite interview with, well, aside from the 2 Triple Crowns, Justify last year and Pharaoh in 15, was last year before the Belmont. I'm back there at the barn. You got all the family with you. We're getting ready for the walkover. And you said, you're a little nervous. I don't want to talk to you. And I said, I'll shut up.
You know what? That's the thing is about it with the Triple Crown. I'd been up there before. And I've seen really good horses get beat, and for some reason it looks like it's going to happen, and it never happens.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, I just want to get through. And once we did it with American Pharoah with Justify, I was walking up there, and I was telling Jimmie, my assistant, one thing about it, I feel pretty good now because we know it can be done. It's doable. So now, we know we can make that 20-foot putt.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what it feels like watching a 20-foot putt go in the hole. It takes forever when they turn for a hole. And so, but I felt really confident about Pharaoh, but I didn't want to say, I didn't want to jinx myself. I'm very superstitious. I don't want to jinx myself.
Right.
I've never been, I'd love to have gone up there and say, hey, bring them on, and I didn't want to upset those other trainers, and I want to, they show me any disrespect, So, but for the Justify, I could tell that I knew the jockeys, the trainers, and they were going to come after it. They weren't going to hand it to him. They were going to come after him. And so, he had to work at it a little bit harder because he had to go faster because of the 1 hole to get out of there. And he just showed what a magnificent animal he was.
There's 2 great moments with American Pharoah and Justify. You've won more Triple Crown races. You passed up Wayne Lucas last year when you won the Triple Crown. You got 15 of those. Do you ever think about that 6th Kentucky Derby win? You have 5. If you win 6, you'll be tied with another legend, Ben Jones. Or do you let your mind, when you're dreaming in black and white, even think about records like that, Bob?
No, you know what? I've never been like a guy for the records. I've never been that way. I just feel like, I think the reason Lucas only has 15 because he stayed in the quarter horse business too long. See, I jumped out of there quick. He stayed there, about 5 years too long. Otherwise, the record would be bigger. But Wayne is still, I think he's one of the greatest ever. And what he did what I followed him in the quarter horse business. What he did in the quarter horse business, he just revolutionized every sport. Wayne would have been successful in anything he did. If he would have stayed coaching basketball, he would have gone to the Final Four, won a few Final Fours. And that's a guy. He's like a Calipari kind of guy. He's that smart person. He just knows. Just a smart guy. And so, and there's another guy I loved hanging out during is Coach Calipari. He's the greatest. I love that guy.
He had a great time. I saw him at the Triple Crown. He was almost as excited as you when Justify won last year. And, to me, when people ask me about what makes the Kentucky Derby so special, it's kind of like what we're talking about there with John Calipari and Mike Krzyzewski. They're one and dones. They've been going with guys where they got one shot to try to get to a Final Four, win a championship. You do that every year. It's one and done. You're not coming back next year with Roadster or Game Winner or Improbable in a Triple Crown race. And so you got one shot.
I told that to Coach Calipari. So he says it was about Justified to Belmont. So, will he run next year? I said, no, Coach, I'm like you. I'm one and done, but I like it. I said, I like one and done. I don't have a problem with that.
If you had to rank them right now, is it fair to ask you to rank Roadster, Game Winner, and Improbable? Do you put them all three together? Do you have a better feeling about one than the other right now?
They're first of all, they're three different types of horses, and they're all three different colors. I got a bay, a gray, and a chestnut.
Yep. Yeah.
And so I got it covered. But I really think that the Game Winner, he's a fighter. He's going to be right there. He's right there. He tries hard. You've got Improbable. He got me a little anxious the other day in the gate. I didn't like that, but I don't know what it was. He was in the gate for a long time, but he's going to be right there. He's got a beautiful stride. He's athletic. And the Roadster, he's not one-dimensional. He can be right there. He's got a long stride, and I think the 1.25 miles is not going to be a problem for him, but he does have tactical speed. He can be up there close. And the thing about the Derby now with his point system, you've seen all these preps and you see these crazy horses going out there fast. And now those guys are gone. You've got the crazy speed horses. They're not in there because they didn't qualify. They weren't good enough to go, they didn't get the point. So the pace is not going to be as fast. And so your front runners are going to have, if you can stay out of trouble, that's the whole key, break and stay out of trouble. You give an edge to those kind of horses, so that's what makes my horses makes them tough because they're the only one that, Game Winner, he likes to be off the pace a little bit. So, but, so there's a lot of, you learn from this. So that's why the draw is so important.
And, you talk about Wayne Lucas would have been successful as a coach had he wanted to. There are some who say, and having heard you play the guitar and talking with your brother PA about it recently, and Bill, possibly you would have been in a rock group had you not been a trainer, because you're a heck of a guitar player that I don't know how many people know that. I mean, you can actually play a guitar.
No, I'm not that good. Believe me, I'm not good.
For those of us who aren't musically inclined, you're pretty good.
No, all I do is I just strum chords. Believe me, I would have loved to. I just cannot. I get to a certain level. I was with Richie Sambora of Bon Jovi at his house a few months ago, and he picked up the guitar.
Yeah.
And you talk about a musician.
Yeah.
Oh, these guys are they're like these great jockeys. They're just way above us, just like these. They're geniuses, and when people tell me, Bob, you're a genius. If I was a genius, I would not be training horses. Okay, just get that right now. I would not be. Geniuses do not train horses. They're doing other businesses. Okay, that's the way it is. So, but I don't mind the compliment, but I am not a genius.
Well, people say that after they bet on your horse and you win. Bob's a genius, and when they lose, come on, Bob.
He's a bum. What's wrong with him? And so and they do overbet my horses a little bit. So gamblers, they're always mad at me because my horses, they don't come through, or if I beat their long shot or whatever. But it's fun. It's a game that the beauty of it is that nobody can figure it out. If we could figure it out, which are the only horses that can run, we could buy only the good ones and bet on only the good, it would be too easy, And so, and there's no geniuses in our game, And so, that's what makes it, intriguing. A lot of these successful owners get in the business and they say, I'm going to do this. And I think I've got a program. I'm going to do it like it doesn't work that way. You better be really lucky. It's a numbers game. You got to have the numbers. And that's what's, kept me in the game.
Well, you come up with a formula, whatever it is, it keeps working. I mean, to stay on the Derby scene, much less to come in with top contenders like Roadster, Game Winner, and Improbable this year, whatever's in that bottle that you're mixing up is working good as far as the magic formula to keep getting. No, wait a minute. No, let me take that back. Let me take that back. My God, this is a fun show. All you people out there listening, no, we're not implying or insinuating nothing there. We're talking about, jeez, you're right.
We're not talking other sports.
We're not talking. Yes, we're not. We're talking about fun. Fun. Getting the right formula to win. Jeez, people. Yes, Bob.
The formula is I start out with like 42-year-olds every year. And
yeah.
That's what a lot of people think. I 40, and I keep my numbers down. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't work. And so, but I have a good staff, and I train for really nice people and they have a lot of fun because, fortunately, we get if you can win 20% of the time. Yeah. You're really doing well. So we get beat more than we win. So I remember Mike Pegram, when he got me to switch over from quarter, he said, "Why did you pick me?" He says, "Well, Bob, one thing about horse, you lose more than you win, and you're a lot more fun to be with when we lose." So that was. I thought he was going to tell me because we think you're the greatest. Well, no, I'm just more fun when we lose.
Which, you know what? That might be the most realistic and greatest compliment to give you. You know that?
Well, I mean, I think I got a pretty good sense of humor, and sometimes we have a bad situation. You got to make some. That's what I love about like Jill. Jill's probably the wittiest of all of us. She just when something happens, she's always got a good. She's got a good deal. I'll never forget. I had this owner, and he's a good guy, his name is Luch Racing. He had this Ria Antonia, she was in the Oaks. And he came in and he had shaved RIA in his back of his head, his hair. And I go, and Jill goes, he showed me this, and I go, I said, and he tells him, I hope that R doesn't turn into an M when she turns for a home. And, and it did, I go, well, it's just, she always comes with something good, but it's something that you go crazy, everybody says, well, you're sort of bipolar because you're up, you're down, you're up and down.
Yeah.
That's what this game does. You got to be tough. You have to be really, that's why everybody says, is your son Bodie going to be a trainer? I said, no, because there's too many disappointments. There's a lot of disappointment in this game. You got to be able to handle it. And it's coming, and it's hard to get used to. I've gotten used to it, but I'm really not that used to it. You have to be prepared for the disappointments, And so it's like owning a franchise, You get beat, It's just how much can you take of it? You know what I mean? It's driving you nuts. And if you have a good horse, and all of a sudden it looks like you got a Derby horse, and something happens, it gets sick, it gets hurt, injured, or it's just a letdown. So that's why we're on just pins and needles, and that's why I have 3 stents in my heart. This will wear you down, dude. But you know what? I'm hanging in there. I love it, and it's these horses. This is not what I do for a living. It's a way of life. Training is a way of life because we want to be around these horses, and they bring us so much joy, and they all have their own personalities, and I just, you love being around them. You're outdoors and you're with horses. I mean, you can't beat that. I mean, it's just, it's the best job you can have in life.
Well, it shows, and I always appreciate it because I've had to interview you during some losses, and I've interviewed trainers sometimes when they win, Bob, and they don't seem happy. But, you're always a pro when I interview you, win or lose. So that's kind of going back to what Mike Pegram said. You appreciate the fact that, just to be in that moment, just to be in a big stage and have a shot says a lot for anybody.
Well, most of the times we're like the heavy favorites, so there's a lot of extra stress put on us. And when we do win, sometimes we're just relieved, that we didn't mess it up when you have a good horse. And that's what really the pressure is. I like American Pharoah, I was just so stressed. I knew I had the horse to do it with. And he just barely got there, and I thought, wow, what happened there? And even my wife asked me that night, says, I thought we had the super horse. What, he barely won. What happened? I don't know. But I'm glad he won. I said, maybe he doesn't want, maybe he wants to be on the lead. And we put him on the lead, and that was the end of that. We were taking his speed away from him. But, you learn sometimes, I had a horse called Point Given. We found out his style, a race too late. He could have won the Triple Crown, but it's fun, and it's nerve-wracking, but it's worth it.
Well, it's always fun to talk to you, and I look forward to seeing you at Churchill Downs, and hopefully we'll be hanging out with you on Derby Day.
Well, Kenny, I'm hoping I'm there, and we're having, we'll be nervous, but we're having fun.
Well, that's me. I'm nervous, but I have fun every Derby, and hanging out with Bob Baffert's a big reason for all that. So best of luck, my friend. I will see you in Louisville in a matter of days.
All right, Kenny.
Thank you, Bob. Bob Baffert, the Hall of Fame trainer with 3 shots at this year's Derby, Roadster, Game Winner, and Improbable. Will this be the year he wins his 6th and tie the record of the great Ben Jones? We'll be back with more of the Horse Racing Show right after this. Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. Glad that you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook or following us on Twitter at Horse Racing Show, as well as Google Play and iTunes. And delighted to have this man with us. He has been a great friend of mine for years. I met him at the press box at Oaklawn Park in Arkansas. A noted journalist who is now very famous on television with the NFL Network and, of course, with NBC. The top analyst on horse racing, Randy Moss, joins us now. Hello, Randy.
Kenny Rice, my man. When exactly did we meet in the Oaklawn Park press box? I know you were with ESPN doing horse racing at the time. That was a long time ago.
I almost want to think, you know what? I can remember distinctly that it was Oaklawn press box, and I'm not sure if it was a Val Pony year or not. It might have been. Would that have been like 97, 98, somewhere in through there?
I think it might have been before that.
It might have been before that. Yeah, maybe
I think it might have been in the early 90s. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We've been friends for so long, that's good that you don't know. You know what I'm saying? It's like, how long have you been friends? I don't know. Pretty much since we've met. I don't know.
Makes us sound a little younger if we don't come with a number.
Randy and I met just last year, folks, at the Derby. Stumbled across each other accidentally. But you've been in this sport, since you were a kid. I remember you showing me pictures of, like, with your family at Oaklawn Park when you were a boy growing up.
You know what's funny, Kenny? My parents both passed away within the last few years. That's not funny, but my uncle bought one of the very first color video cameras back in the 1950s. And I just stumbled across a whole, boxes full of this film that he had shot on his new Kodak color camera that was just sitting in his house. And I took them in to have them transferred onto DVDs. And one of the clips is of my parents together standing in front on the apron at Oaklawn Park in 1959, and my mother was pregnant with me.
Oh, wow.
That was my first trip to the races.
Jeez. Oh, that is wonderful.
How weird is that? And yeah, I was born and raised in Hot Springs, and I was raised, spent most of my childhood in a neighborhood filled with horse trainers. My next door neighbor was Bob Holthus.
Oh, yeah.
On the other side of me was a trainer named Jimmie Johnson. Right down the street, Dave Vance. Another fellow named Bob Irwin, who used to be a longtime assistant for Marion Vanberg before he went on his own. And I think he's in the Nebraska Racing Hall of Fame. So yeah, I had no chance. I was raised around horse racing in Hot Springs.
Well, you've covered many sports and covered them well for years. And among the many awards, and I had the privilege of being there, it was Breeders' Cup week at Del Mar, and Randy was honored by the turf riders and broadcasters. And you gave a great story about going to the track underage. Now, most people won't realize at one time, I can still remember when they put locks on the payphones.
Right.
Nobody's going to be making
Exactly.
a phone call before this race goes off. That was in the day pre-cell phone and all that. But you had a great story about going to the track when you're underage.
Sure. Oaklawn back in the day, and even in the not so distant past, because they're in the Bible Belt, sort of, had a very strict policy. You had to be 16 in order to get in the racetrack, and they policed it very, very carefully. In fact, since I was raised in a family that loved horse racing, I had cousins, older cousins, that were always constantly trying to sneak in. They wore stacked shoes, fake mustaches, everything. And there was no luck whatsoever. Well, on my 12th birthday, which coincided with Arkansas Derby Day, 1971, I'm going to age myself, Bob Holthus, next door neighbor, close family friend, told my parents that he was going to get me into the racetrack. Well, I was tiny. I was 5'3" when I started high school. So when I was 12, I was like, 12 going on 9, and considerably skeptical that I was going to be able to get into the races. But Bob said, "Don't worry about it." And he told my parents, take Randy to the front of the grandstand, and I'll meet you there an hour before the races. So fine. So I get out of the car. Bob's there. Bob introduces me to this little man. And he said he'll get you into the races. I said, okay, fine. So he took me around to the back entrance of Oaklawn, off to the side, which they had a guard shack, and there was a guard. and the guy said, just follow me and just walk through. So of course the guard steps out in front of me and says, sorry, you can't come in. And the man walks up to the guard and says, he's with me, it's okay. And the guard says, I don't care who the hell he's with. This kid is clearly not 16 years old. He's not even close to 16. And I'm not going to lose my job. He's not going in. And so the man I was with reaches into his pocket, pulls out a badge, says, my name is Joe Crane. I'm the Hot Springs Chief of Police. There's been a crime committed. The suspect is in the grandstand. This young man is the only witness. And if he doesn't come in with me, I'm arresting you for obstruction of justice. And the guard knew the gig was up. The guard just waved his hands and said, go on. So he walked me right up to the Holthus box, and I sat in their box all day long, 1971, made show bets, and got into the races for the very first time on Arkansas Derby Day.
I love that story. I love that story.
And then the punchline, like literally maybe 15 years ago, I'm walking through the grandstand at Oaklawn. I'm back home to visit family, and this man stops me. He had to be 90-something years old, and he said, you don't know who I am, do you? And I said, I'm sorry, I don't. And he said, does the name Joe Crane ring a bell?
Wow.
And I said, you son of a gun. Does it ring a bell? And he said, you remember that? He said, I've told that story many times. And I said, oh, my gosh, so have I. That was fantastic.
Oh, man, that is great. I love that story, Randy. I mean, you're a wonderful storyteller anyway, but that's one of my favorite stories of yours. I always loved it. Randy and I, we did Today at the Races several times on ESPN2. Remember, that was like before HRTV existed, before TVG as we know it now existed. So if you wanted to watch a live race and you weren't at the track or at OTB, that was kind of the only place to see it for a long time, was on Today at the Races. And I remember we did a Mother's Day, and sadly both of our mothers have passed, but we always said hi to Susie and Edith. Your mom, Susie, my mom, Edith. And we're taping this, by the way, on her birthday today. So that kind of conjured up some memories too.
Oh, wow. How about that? Well, happy birthday, Edith.
I remember your moms at least watched us, so that was good. We had 2 people watching each time we were on.
Yeah, I remember we did it Today at the Races once at Keeneland.
Yeah.
And it was snowing. You remember that? It was at night because we were doing some California races, right? Yep. And we were in front of the grandstand, and it was dark, and we had the lights, and we were doing it in the snow. And my God, it was cold.
I remember that. And about this time every year, and all the meteorologists listening in will be upset with us about this, but I'm telling you, it's like, I forget the order, but I'll bet you might have heard this growing up in Hot Springs like I did growing up in Kentucky. You got Red Bud winter and Blackberry winter and Dogwood winter. And so on the calendar every year when Keeneland opens up the first part of April, it's usually cold and the dogwoods are blooming. There. If you ever come to Kentucky, folks listening in, it's cold, you'll see the dogwoods are blooming. How about that, Randy? Now we're talking,
wow.
We talk weather, we talk everything on this show. Because I do remember it was at Keeneland, and I believe it was in April, and the race was at Santa Anita, and it was cold and spitting snow on us, and nobody could believe it was April in Kentucky.
And the dogwoods were blooming.
The dogwoods are blooming. They look very nice right now, by the way. And this is the time of the year, by the way, and no one better at keeping up with it all than Randy. I don't know if your ears were burning, an old Southern saying. About 2 weeks ago, we had this guy named Jerry Bailey on the show, and we were both singing your praises of how prepared you are, as prepared as any announcer I've ever worked with on any sport I've ever covered, getting ready for a horse race, not just the Derby. So I know you've got a lot of notes already in the pocket there about this Derby picture, Randy, which unlike some of the most recent years, you don't see that horse maybe storming in there. You go, wow, I can't wait to see him again. Or maybe you've already seen that horse that people are overlooking.
No, I mean, it seems almost like a broken record. I mean, we say this so often, and it's almost become a cliche that it's a balanced, evenly matched field, But, I mean, seriously, there are a lot of horses right now that are solid, that are very hard to separate. I mean, look at the choice that Mike Smith has now between Roadster and Omaha Beach. That's just a perfect example. And Jose Ortiz had a choice theoretically between Improbable and Tacitus, and he's going to ride Tacitus. And there are obviously probably 4 or 5 other horses, including Game Winner and Vacoma and Maximum Security, horses like that just fit right into the mix. And whether you try to separate them, if you're a class handicapper or you're a speed figure handicapper, they're all right there in the mix. And it should be a pretty entertaining Derby week.
And Randy Moss with NBC is on the show today, a good friend of mine for many years. And I know that you know all about those speed figures, and I always pay attention when you talk about them, as does many people that follow you on Twitter or the Racing Forum or wherever. Is this the one where there's just so bunched together that this could actually be fun, and possibly that wide open another long shot pops into it with the way it all seems bunched up, Randy?
Oh, entirely possible. It's possible that we could have a surprise winner of the Kentucky Derby, which there haven't been as many in the last 5 or 6 years as we had gotten accustomed to. Or it could be one of those situations where it's almost like a turf race, where you get 4 or 5 horses together on the wire in a real dramatic kind of finish. So it could be pretty entertaining. There are a lot of good storylines too, as always.
Yeah, one of them to me is Jason Service, coming in with Maximum Security, who you and I could have claimed for $16,000 back in December.
Yep.
And now he comes in, he might, I don't know, I think he'll certainly be one of the favorites, if not the morning line favorite after that impressive Florida Derby.
And Jason Service has done such a good job with Maximum Security. I mean, here's a guy. Obviously, his brother John Service trained Smarty Jones to nearly sweep the Triple Crown back in 2004. And at that time, I don't think anyone had ever even heard of Jason Service. And now, I mean, Jason Service has become one of the most visible trainers in the Northeast and in Florida because of his win percentage. It's almost off the charts. But the job that he's done with Maximum Security is pretty special, because when he ran as a 2-year-old and he ran for $16,000 claiming, I mean, the reason that he ran for $16,000 claiming was not just that Service never visualized that the horse could be a Kentucky Derby horse, but also because the horse doesn't look the best in terms of conformation and things like that. And Service theorized that when the horse came to the paddock to run for the very first time, he was a homebred. He's a son of New Year's Day. The pedigree is not all that, all that sexy, as they say in the business. Mm-hmm. And when they looked at him, when the other trainers actually looked at him in the paddock, he didn't look that good. And they would say, no, homebred, 16,000, looks like that. We're not going to touch him with a 10-foot pole. And he was right. They didn't claim him. He said he took a gamble. He knew he was worth more than 16,000, but he didn't think anyone would mess with him, and he was correct. And now, lo and behold, I mean, not only was he not claimed, but he'll be, among the 5 or 6 choices for the Kentucky Derby.
Handicappers will cringe, but then this isn't a handicapping show until I bring experts like you on anyway. But they'll cringe at just this thought that I'm going to throw out there. But I remember when Charlie Whittingham came in with Ferdinand for the first time. I remember Carl Nafsker came in with Unbridled, and Mac Miller with Sea Hero and and John Service, who people hadn't heard of. With Smarty Jones, Barkley Tagg the year before that with Funny Side. And I said, there's something about these guys that don't just pop up or trying to win this thing every year. And they're good, solid horsemen, some obviously Hall of Famers that I mentioned in there. But, I'm leading up to Richard Mandela is coming in with Omaha Beach, and you don't think Richard Mandela and Derby horse usually. That's not been his forte. But, I think it's interesting that a guy like Richard Mandela, a Hall of Famer who's had great horses, is coming into the Kentucky Derby now with maybe the favorite in Omaha Beach.
Exactly. I mean, here's a guy who obviously is one of the very best trainers in the world. He's in the Hall of Fame for a reason, but he's not in the Hall of Fame for the same reason that, say, Bob Baffert is in the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. He's not in the Hall of Fame because he specializes in 3-year-olds and in the Triple Crown like Baffert does. I mean, Mandela's specialty has always been older horses. It's been to a certain extent at other times in his career, imports from South America, long distance turf horses. But, he's not just a one-trick pony. I mean, obviously, he trained Beholder, the sensational filly that's going to wind up being in the Hall of Fame. But he's just never really overemphasized training for the Kentucky Derby, training for the Triple Crown, like guys like Bob Baffert and Todd Pletcher do. I mean, the last Kentucky Derby starter that he had was way back in 2004. And in the years in between until this year, he only had 4 horses that he even started in any of the Triple Crown prep races. So he's, it just was never really in the forefront of his mind. He always said he'd love to win the Kentucky Derby. If he had a Derby horse, then that would be fine with him. But he's not going to take a horse that he's not sure is a Derby horse and try to force him into the Derby. That's not his style. And now in Omaha Beach, he's got a horse that is taking him to the Kentucky Derby. And boy, it looks like he's getting there the right way.
So that random crazy theory is not too far off the charts, perhaps, of mine.
No, I mean, and there are other names too. I mean, look at David Cross.
Yeah.
Sonny's Halo in 83.
Right.
Cam Gambolati and Spin to Buck.
Yeah.
In 1985.
Drysdale and Fusaichi Pegasus in 2000 comes in.
Exactly.
Exactly,
right.
I remember Charlie Whittingham, and I'm sure he told you this. I think he told everybody this. It wasn't an exclusive. But before, up there in the darkness, trying to get a shot back in the old days, just hoping to get some video of when he had Ferdinand out there before dawn, and it was so dark out there you couldn't see anybody at Churchill Downs in his training. And he told that story, he's on a plane, and the guy asked him, what's he do? And he said, I'm a horse trainer. And the guy asked Charlie, said, well, have you ever won the Kentucky Derby? And he said, no. He said, then you're no horse trainer. And I think Charlie told that forever until obviously he won with Ferdinand in 86.
Yeah, and then with Sunday Silence again later.
Yeah, then he pops back. He peaked in the 70s. Who knew? Charlie was in his 70s when he was at his most famous. And that's the thing with the Derby, isn't it? Because people probably ask you when you're at NFL camp about the Derby. They'll ask maybe about other races, and I know some football players are in tune with what's going on. But that Kentucky Derby does carry so much weight with it. To me, I've always equated it to winning an Oscar. If you don't even know about like acting that much, you don't follow movies, you hear they won an Oscar, you get what they wanted. It was a movie. You win the Kentucky Derby, it's a horse race.
And when you're in the media, you also can sort of get exactly how the public feels about that. Because in the week leading up to the Kentucky Derby, I will probably do 25 radio shows all around the country, from places all around the country, places that don't, like Atlanta, have no racetrack at all. And then as soon as the Derby is over, Preakness, Belmont, nothing.
Yeah.
It's the Kentucky Derby that just catches the interest of so many people around the country. I mean, if there is a possibility for a Triple Crown when we get to the Belmont, then I might do 4 or 5 radio shows.
Right.
But everybody wants to talk about the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah. And probably from a handicapping standpoint, you would much rather be like betting like the third race at Oaklawn today than always trying to pick 20 horses or 18 or I think 20 this year, but however many are going to jam into the gate at the Kentucky Derby.
And even though the favorites have been doing better, much better over the last 6-7 years, it's still, to me, it's still the most challenging race in America to handicap, and it's much more challenging, I think, even than it used to be way back in the day, because the horses haven't run as often. I mean, if you just look at the statistics, even as recently as the 1970s and 1980s, the average horses that would run in the Kentucky Derby would have run 10, 11, 12, 13 times in their career before they get to the Derby, right?
Right.
In the decade starting with the 2010 and Super Saver up until right now, the average number of starts that horses have made are less than 6. So you don't really get as much of a line on the horses going in, their strengths and weaknesses, as you used to, because a lot of these horses have never been put in certain types of racing situations. The Derby will be the first time, for example. Some of these horses get dirt kicked in their face. Some of these horses, have to deal with a fast-paced scenario in which they might not make the early lead and they have to sit 4 or 5 lengths off the pace. There's just all sorts of things that the Derby brings into play now that horses may have never seen before.
Talking with Randy Moss of NBC Sports, a good friend and as good as it gets in preparation and being ready, as you'll see, as you've already seen through some of NBCSN's coverage of the prep races and now getting ready for the Derby itself coming up just a matter of days. And I think I only know 2 people that actually have met Bill Clinton, you and Eddie Sutton, who used to coach at Arkansas, that, of course, went on to Kentucky and Oklahoma State. You're the only 2 people I personally know that met then Governor and, of course, future President Bill Clinton.
Yeah, both from Arkansas.
Yeah,
obviously. I've met him a few times, and I was pretty good friends with his brother Roger as well. It was a funny story at Oaklawn Park. One year they had the National Association of Secretaries of State from all 50 states in America, and they had a convention in Little Rock. This is when Clinton was running for president the first time. And they all came over to the races at Oaklawn Park, and Clinton was going to give sort of a keynote speech. And they wanted me to follow Bill Clinton and go up to the podium and basically tout everybody there. Okay, you're here at the races. Here's who I think you should bet on, right? So I'm there and I'm waiting in the wings for, the future president of the United States to get up and speak. And he gets up to this is the quintessential politician. So Clinton gets up and he's late as always. And finally he gets up there and he gives an unbelievable speech. He could work a room like nobody else. And he actually said, because his mother was a huge horse player,
right,
Virginia. And I knew his mother very well. And he said, all right, I'm gonna go off the podium now. So I know you guys are all here to listen to Randy Moss and hear what he has to say about the horses coming up. He said, Randy doesn't know this, but he knows my mother and he knows my mother's a big gambler, but Randy's picks helped put me through college. Which sounds good, except Bill's about 10 years older than me. So
I was going to say,
not quite the truth. But anyway, it was kind of a funny moment.
Oh, that's great. I've always heard that Clinton was the kind of guy. I think you told me this too, and I know Coach Sutton had told me this. Said he's the guy that looks at you and shakes your hands, and for that moment, you really feel like you're probably the most important person in the world for that 1 minute of time he gives you. That he's so intense, looking at you and paying attention to what you might have to say.
That's exactly right. And then if you meet him 10 years later, he remembers your name.
Wow. And
so he's got a pretty special gift, and I guess that's why he was elected president of the United States twice.
Wow. Well, and that's why you're doing what you do now. Not only did you help Bill Clinton even after college get through college, but you're up. Nobody will be up earlier than Randy Moss on the backside at Churchill Downs on Derby week. I don't think anybody be. You're up before some of the trainers, I think, out there.
Jerry Bailey.
Jerry Bailey will be. You drag him along, don't you? Would Jerry go that early if it weren't for you?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. We're 1-1A. We get our golf cart.
You do.
We tool around on the backside of Churchill Downs and try to catch as many of these guys as we can every day.
Well, it's going to be, I think, as fun as any Derby coming up. I always look forward to it, and I always, I pay attention to what you guys say because I always like to hear what you're saying as I'm, running around there, maybe going to grab an interview or whatever, because it helps hearing what you guys have had to say a lot of times when I'm getting ready to do something, then, for continuity and just something I might have missed because, as you know, when you're on the ground, you don't get to see everything happening out there, just in your little part of that little corner that you're covering.
Well, we always enjoy Jerry and I both sitting up on the set listening to your reports because you can turn a phrase like nobody else, and you're always right on top of it. So it's going to be a fun week.
Well, my friend, I thank you for being on. We do hope you'll come back sometime, and I love the stories.
Anytime, Kenny, my man. I'll see you on the ground in a couple of weeks up there.
All right. Thank you very much. Randy Moss from NBC Sports joining us on the Horse Racing Show. We'll have more after this. And welcome back as we wrap up the 13th. Wow, it only seems like it was 12 weeks ago we started. The 13th episode of the Horse Racing Show. Thank you for being with us again this week. Thanks to Bob Baffert, the Hall of Fame trainer, as good as it gets, trying for another Kentucky Derby, 3 shots in there. And Randy Moss, my friend of many years. I worked with him at NBC, and he had some good things to say about the Triple Crown and about the Derby. And, he and Bob Baffert both said the similar thing, Thomas Kenny. This is not the one where you see that big horse coming. Mm-hmm. Like Justify was a lot of interest last year. The unraced 2-year-old coming in. Is this audacious to even try it? American Pharaoh looked great. Even going back and seeing horses like Nyquist and all that did win the Derby. They didn't go on and do much after that, but they had that moment. You could see them coming in. Maybe leaving like Orb coming in for Shug McGahee, but I don't see that horse this year. Maybe Omaha Beach for Richard Mandela. Maybe Maximum Security for Jason Service. But I think it's going to be 5 or 6. I think it's going to be one of the more fun derbies.
Yeah, it's up in the air for sure.
Bob is a better guitar player than he says, by the way. I mean, he is pretty.
I'm sure.
And speaking of guitars and moments and rock and roll, when I interviewed Bob Baffert after he won the first Triple Crown of his with American Pharaoh in 2015, I'm up at the grandstand at the Belmont Park, and after the race, I mean, it's deafening. You could not talk to anyone next to you. It was that loud. Really, it was like, it reminded me of going to see The Who or somebody back in the day. It was so loud in there, and everybody's screaming. It's like being in the front row of a ZZ Top concert. You couldn't talk to the person next to you. But all this said, when he starts out, the Zayat family's in a box probably 30 feet, 40 feet down the way from him. We can't find any security. All the security's left, okay? And now people who are generally rather stoic and staid and very proper in horse racing, everybody's reaching out wanting to touch Bob and say hello to him or say hello to his wife, Jill. And now, as the same with the Zayat family, as they're coming, the owners, as they're coming out of their box about 30 feet away. So now you have this throng of people trying to make it to the winner's circle and all these well-wishers and press. And I'm there with the camera crew for NBC, and they want me to step in at the right moment and get the interview, to soak it up, let the applause kind of wash over everyone.
Wait until you can hear each other.
And wait till we can hear each other a little bit. But what happened is the Zayat family's all blocked off trying to get down because people are wishing them well. The Baffert contingent is closing in on them, and now we've got a logjam, and I'm in the middle of it with the NBC crew. And anyone that looks back at that interview, they might notice I had one arm extended, not behind Bob, you can't see it, but I was just trying to hold off people who were still wanting to touch him, just to pat him on the back or shake his hand while I tried to do the winning interview. It was like a mosh pit. Yeah. You remember those, don't you, Scott Hall?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, rock
my
and
knees.
roll.
That's right.
Rock and roll comes to horse racing on that day.
I did
So
it
much
all
for all
for rock
that
and roll.
reverence you like to speak of.
Yeah, that day it was a party. That day it was fun. You know, it was crazy fun, and people were seeing history. They didn't know when they'd ever see it again. We'd waited since '78, and lo and behold, just 3 years later, we'd see it again. Who knows? All right. Stay with us again next week. Thank you for watching us on YouTube, for listening to us on
Google Play and iTunes.
Thank you. Follow us on Ben Chaffins. What else? Instagram
and Twitter.
Instagram and Twitter at Horse Racing Show. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. We'll talk to you and see you again next week right here on the Horse Racing Show. So long, everyone.